Hello and welcome to the Herald Democrat Sports Podcast. I am Jason Della Rosa, the sports editor here at the Herald Democrat, and we are about to enter district play for almost everybody when it comes to the area's football teams. We are in Week 5, so we're going to dive into the Week 5 matchups, and we'll have a look back at what happened last Friday. Like I mentioned, district play is here for just about everybody, so the games really get real as we determine over the next 6 games who's going to make the playoffs, who's going to miss the playoffs, who's going to win a district championship. All those interesting questions will be able to be answered over the next month and a half. So we'll start with the District 7-5A opener for Sherman, which is playing at McKinney North, and that game is going to be at McKinney ISD Stadium. For those who have not been to their brand new stadium, it's a very expensive and nice stadium, as you would expect from an expensive stadium. So don't go to Ron Poe. Go to the McKinney ISD Stadium, their new stadium, to watch Sherman take on McKinney North. This is a game that has 2 3-1 teams going up against each other, and in the district standings, as we get ready to kick those off, there's only three teams that have a winning record in District 7-5A Division 1, Sherman North and Texas High. So not only will the winner get a leg up in the standings at 1-0, they'll also continue their winning ways. Sherman has a 3-game winning streak, trying to make that a 4-game winning streak, and that'll be the first time that's happened for them, if it does happen, since 2012. This game last year, Sherman won 59-21 in a game where they were up 31-7 at halftime, and were able to kind of cruise there in the second half. And this is a swing game from last year as well, because in the final standings, Sherman, North, and West Mesquite all tied for third place. And because Sherman won this game, not only because they won it, but they won it by the margin they did, they were able to earn one of the 2 tiebreaker spots. North got the other spot, and West Mesquite was the odd team out. And if Sherman had lost this game last year, they would have lost out on a tiebreaker to West Mesquite for 4th place. So it was a really crucial game for Sherman. Last year at this time they were 1-3, so the record was flipped, and they were seeking a good start to district, and they were able to kind of ride that momentum. So they're coming off a 23-6 victory against Justin Northwest. Another strong defensive effort for Sherman, which since the season opener, they've allowed fewer points than the week before. So if that trend is going to hold, they're either going to allow a field goal or shut out North. And when I talk about North here in a minute, you'll see why that might be a little far-fetched, but you never know when it comes to a matchup. But Sherman won 23-6 last week. Benji Amayabu had 2 touchdowns. He's had at least 2 touchdowns in each of the last 3 games. He caught a 55-yard touchdown pass from Tate Bethel, and then those 2 connected again in the 4th quarter on a 20-yard touchdown pass. Bethel also ran in a score, and there was a safety on special teams. That's why they have the 23 points. And the defense did a really good job against Northwest. That's a team that was averaging over 37 points a game. They held them to 27 carries for 57 yards, and the touchdown scored by Northwest came with a little over 7 minutes to go in the game. So they were on their way to pitching a shutout before the Texans got on the board. So it was a good finish to non-district play for Sherman. Like I said, they're on a 3-game winning streak after the opening loss to Denison, and they're going to take on a Northwest team who is averaging over 50 points a game so far. They're winning with their offense and not their defense. So if this turns into a shootout, don't be surprised. They do have a common opponent, and that is Justin Northwest. Like we mentioned, Sherman won last week 23-6. 2 weeks ago, North beat Northwest 68-65. So if you want to play a comparison game there, you can. North's only losses to Frisco Wakeland, and like I said, in all of their games, they've scored in the 40s. Their low is 44 points, but they've also given up at least 34 points in every single game. Last week they won 56-34 against Rockwall Heath. So could be a shootout. I don't think you'll see a defensive battle this week at all in that one. So points may be at a premium, and whoever has the ball last may end up deciding the game if they can go down and get that winning touchdown. The next game is Denison at Princeton. This is District 7-5A, Division 2. That's a game where you have Denison sitting at 1-1 in district, 2-2 overall after they lost 35-32 against Frisco Reedy last week. And Princeton is 2-1 and 1-0 in district. They opened with the district bye 2 weeks ago, and then last week they won 31-21 against Lake Dallas. So you have a Princeton team that is looking to stay undefeated near the top of the standings. Frisco High and Frisco Reedy are the 2-0 teams going into this week, and Lovejoy, which had the bye this past week, is also 1-0. So you have the 4 teams that are still undefeated. Princeton's one of them. They're going to try to keep it that way. This is a game last year that Denison won 45-20. Last year Princeton only finished 3-7, and they went 2-6 in district. So if they get a win this week, they've already matched their district win total from last year. So they're better than they were last year, and we'll see if Denison's able to come away with the victory. Last week, like I said, the 3-point loss to Frisco Reedy, who is the defending district champ. Denison had a chance late. They were down 21-5 at halftime. They cut the lead to 3 twice, including with a minute left, when Keelan Vaughn caught his 3rd touchdown pass of the game from Caleb Hebner. And they had the onside kick lined up, and it bounced a couple times. They weren't able to recover it. If they were, they had a chance to either win the game and or force overtime with a field goal. So a tough loss there because they had a chance to rally and were unable to come up short. The big news from that game, Jadarian Price, the sophomore running back for Denison, returned to the starting lineup. He had missed the previous 2.5 games with a foot injury. He played well. He had 16 carries for 75 yards and a touchdown. And the word this week is that he's gotten healthier since then. So whatever percentage he was at last week, it's expected that he's a little more full go this week. Denison still, despite the loss, they still had over 400 yards. They're averaging about 450 yards, and the balance has been really good. The last 3 games, Denison is averaging over 200 yards passing and over 200 yards rushing. So you can't really focus on one aspect of the offense over the other, and that's something that you can probably look forward going forward. The rest of the season, the way things are going, there's really good balance. They have a lot of weapons that they can go to when it comes to moving the ball down the field, and that has not been a problem for them. Princeton had a quarterback change last week. They went with a sophomore this past week, and instead of their senior Brandon Strickland, I think Isaiah Sadler was the quarterback this last week. That's a situation where I think you're going to go back to you'll see Brandon Strickland out there this week. So and they've both been effective. Princeton, like I said, their offense is a lot better than it was a year ago, and that's a situation where they're feeling good because they beat Lake Dallas, who was a team that beat them last year. So they're already ahead of the game in terms of trying to find those wins that they need to. And here's another situation: if they can get to 2-0, they'll have beaten 2 teams they didn't beat last year and be in a really good spot to earn a playoff spot, because all they would have to do is beat the other teams that they beat last year, and they would move up the standings from where they were. If there is a bright note for Denison going on the road, they are 2-0 on the road and 2-0 at home, or 0-2 at home. So the fact that this is a road game may not be such a bad thing, because they've won both of their games on the road. So we'll see what happens in what could be an early deciding matchup, like we mentioned with Sherman and North. This could be one of those games between Denison and Princeton where the winner gets in and the loser gets out, depending on how things play out the rest of the way. So that'll be interesting to see. The next game is Whitesboro at Paradise. This is in District 4-3A, Division 1. Whitesboro comes in at 2-2. They were able to bounce back with a 21-16 win against Farmersville. And Paradise is sitting at 3-1. They are coming off a 36-13 win over Callisburg. And when you look at how these teams did going into district play, Paradise, Boyd, and Brock are the 3-1 teams. And Boyd as well. They're all 3-1. and Ponder and Whitesboro are sitting at 2-2, and Bowie sitting at 0-4. So everybody's within a game of each other except for Bowie at the bottom. So it should be a competitive district. Whitesboro won this game last year 60-26, and that was the most points by the Bearcats in a district game since 2011. And Paradise has not beaten Whitesboro since 2002. Last year, Paradise was 5th place in the district standings and 2 games out of a playoff spot. Whitesboro is looking to get back into the playoffs, so it should be an interesting first test for Whitesboro. They, like we mentioned, they had the 21-16 win last week. Cade Acker had 26 carries for 197 yards and 2 touchdowns in that one. He also completed 6 of 9 passes for 39 yards and a touchdown to Tristan Gaines. In a game they were losing 10-7 at halftime, and they were able to take the lead in the third quarter, and Acker's final touchdown run extended that in the fourth quarter before Farmersville got on the board, cut the lead to 5, but Whitesboro was able to hang on there. So should be interesting to see how things shake out in that district. Pilot Point was undefeated until they lost to Gunner. We'll get to that game here in a minute. And Brock is on a 3-game winning streak after opening with a loss. So, those two are probably considered the favorites. But we'll see how things shake out. All it takes is one win to change some minds. So we'll see what happens there. The next game, as we get into District 5-3A Division 1, we have a couple of matchups there. And the first one to talk about is Howe at Bonham. Howe is 1-3, and Bonham is also 1-3. And they're both entering this game off of losses. Howe was beaten by Boyd 34-7, and Bonham lost against Dallas Hillcrest 49-17. This is a game last year that Bonham won 49-26. Bonham was had a really good year, their best year in several years, and they were able to finish as the district runner-up and make the playoffs as they dropped down from Class 4A in the latest realignment. But they've already lost more regular season games than they did a year ago. So, they were 8-2 last year in the regular season. They've already lost 3 games. So, they had some key losses, especially on offense to graduation, and so they're kind of struggling to find their way to kind of get back in the mix, make a return trip to the playoffs. Howe was only down 14-7 last week against Boyd. They got a touchdown catch from Colby Winden from Leighton Elvington to make it 14-7 going into the break, and then Boyd was able to tack on with its rushing game in the second half and kind of pull away. And so Howe's in a situation where they're trying to find some things. They went 0-6 last year in district play. So anything in the positive direction is what they're looking for, and this might be a chance. Like I said, with Bonham taking a step back, Howe's shown that they beat SNS by a couple touchdowns. The offense has shown some flashes. It'll be interesting to see what the quarterback situation is. Austin Haley was injured a couple weeks ago. He did play in a limited role this past week. I don't know how much of that was wanted to make sure he was ready for the district opener or not, but Leighton Elvington's done a pretty good job, so you could see some bouncing back there. The big thing with Howe is getting the ground game going. They've kind of struggled the last couple weeks on that, so the winner there is going to be in a good spot, and hopefully can kind of carry that momentum coming off the non-district schedule that they've had. The favorite in District 5-3A Division 1 certainly has to be the Pottsboro Cardinals. They'll be hosting Commerce on Friday night. Commerce is 1-3, and Pottsboro is 4-0. And not only is Pottsboro 4-0, but they are the only team in District 5-3A Division 1 that has a winning record going into district play. Emory Rains is sitting at 2-2, but everybody else, Van Alstyne, Howe, Commerce, Lone Oak, and Bonham, are all 1-3. So if you're looking at those numbers, you have to feel that Pottsboro is the favorite. They finished third last year behind Van Alstyne and Bonham. So at the very least, I think Pottsboro thinks that they would be good enough to make the playoffs. But the way they've started this season, they've almost outscored their opponents by an average of 25 points a game. They beat Gunner, who is state ranked in 3A Division II, to hand them their first regular season loss in 4 years. And like I said, they're undefeated right now, so they have to feel pretty good about their chances. They won last week 62-28 against Aubrey, and another big night for the offense. Cy Shope finished with 24 carries for 235 yards and 2 touchdown runs, and he also caught a touchdown pass from Braden Plyler. Plyler finished 19 of 30 for 271 yards. He did have an interception, but he also had 3 touchdown passes, and then he ran 15 times for 109 yards and 2 touchdowns. Titus Lyons, again, was the leading receiver. He had 8 catches for 125 yards and a touchdown. So things are going really well for Pottsboro, both offensively and defensively. And against Commerce last year, this was a game that Pottsboro won 38-0, and the last 2 meetings, Pottsboro has won by a combined score of 87-0. So, and the 62 points last week tied the program record for points in a game. They had done it twice before, once in 2006 against Bells, and then in 2013 in a game they needed triple overtime to do that against Cattle Mills. So the offense is rolling right now for Pottsboro, and Commerce is coming off a 29-24 loss against Kemp. They've already won as many games as they did last year. Last year their only win came in district play, and it was against Howe, and they finished 1-8. They had a game get canceled due to weather. So they're already ahead of the game in terms of that, but it might be really hard for Commerce to keep up with the Cardinals. That's a tough draw for them in opening district, having to go on the road to what's viewed as the potential district champion. Standing in the way of Pottsboro winning the district title is, of course, the defending district champ, which is Van Alstyne. They are playing at Emory Rains, and until somebody knocks them from the perch, they are the defending district champ. And they're going for back-to-back crowns. If they do pull it off, it will be the first time they've done that since the 1962-63 seasons. So it's been a really long time since they've been able to pull that off. Van Alstyne, as we mentioned the standings, they come in at 1-3. Emory Rains is 2-2. Van Alstyne lost last week 26-8 against Gainesville. And Rains won 32-26 in their game against against White Oak. And so that's a situation where, yes, you're the defending district champ, but you are having you had a bad start to the season. The good thing about that, in terms of silver lining, is Van Alstyne had a bad start to last year as well, and then went undefeated in district play. So they were overcome a bad start, and I'm sure that's what Coach Michael Miller and the staff over in Van Alstyne are telling their kids is, hey, we don't have to worry about what we did in district play because the same thing happened last year and we still won the district title. So we know we have the ability to pull that off. This was a game last year. Van Alstyne won 51-0, and so that's not a good number if you're looking at it from Rains. Rains missed the playoffs last year by a game. They've won 2 straight to go with their 2-2 start. So they've got some momentum going, and I'm sure they kind of look at Van Alstyne's record and say, hey, this is let's make it 3 in a row. We can get revenge for last year. Gainesville's offense really kind of struggled last week in the loss. Van Alstyne's offense struggled in the loss to Gainesville last week. They ran the ball 20 times and only had 36 yards and 151 yards through the air on 7 of 25 passing with 3 interceptions. So it was not a good game. And that was a game they actually led at halftime 8-6. It was a defensive struggle for the first half, and again, Gainesville was able to use its running game, particularly Brandon Baker. He had 31 carries and 176 yards as the workhorse there, as they kind of controlled the tempo and were able to tack on some scores, not only to take the lead, but to kind of put some distance between the two of them. So that'll be an interesting one. I think 2 of the 3 matchups in 5-3A are interesting this week, and just because Van Alstyne Rains is interesting because you have the defending district champ who's off to not a great start, and Howe Bonham, you have 2 struggling teams. Someone's going to get a win, and that could propel them to get into the mix. And like I said, we'll see what Pottsboro can do and keep that momentum going and get to 5-0. We drop down to District 5-3A Division 2, and we have Gunner, who is the defending district champ, at Nakona. Gunner is 3-1. Their loss, like we mentioned, is to Pottsboro. Nakona is sitting at 2-2. They are coming off a 61-7 loss against Valley View, while Gunner had a 35-0 win against previously undefeated Pilot Point last week. Gunner's been on a roll the last 2 weeks. They bounced back from that loss to Pottsboro. They beat Whitesboro 49-7. They won last week against Pilot Point 35-0. And in that game, Peyton Lowe led the way. He had 2 touchdown runs, and he also caught a 31-yard touchdown pass from Mitchell Brewer. Clayton Reed also scored on the ground, and David Denton had his second straight game with a defensive touchdown. This time he returned an interception, 36 yards for a score. Gunner was up 21-0 at halftime. It was 35-0 by the end of the third quarter, and Pilot Point barely got to 100 yards of offense for the game. They had 69 yards passing, and they ran 24 times for 59 yards. So yet another shutout for Gunner, which is what they do in their last 50 games. I believe they've got 24 shutouts, so there's a 50-50 chance in the last 50 games that you're going to get shut out by Gunner. Gunner, while their regular season winning streak is over, they have won 22 straight district games going back to the 2015 season, and a win against Nakona would give them 29 in their last 30 district games. So they're really hard to deal with in district. In this district, I think it's pretty safe to look and say the top 2 teams are Gunner and Holiday. Both of them are state ranked. They're both 3-1. City View is the other team that has a winning record going into district play. They're 3-1. We'll talk about them in a second. So I think those are the 3 teams if you're looking at in terms of this district. The champion's going to come from them. Who's going to find a way to knock Gunner off that perch, because they kind of rolled through that district last year, and we'll see what happens in terms of that. The other matchup in 5-3A Division II, City View is coming from Wichita Falls to visit SNS. They are 3-1, and SNS is still searching for its first win. It's 0-4 after it lost last week 41-7 against Ponder. City View is coming off its first loss. They lost in a shootout 41-35 against Jacksboro. This is a game where City View won it last year 52-16, and the Rams are trying to break a 15-game losing streak dating back to 2017. It's going to be a tough task for them. Like we've mentioned the last couple weeks, there are games where SNS is showing that they are better, and so it's one of those situations where, like last week, they had scored at least 14 points in every game before the Ponder game last week. City View has scored at least 46 points in each of its wins. So you got to find a way to slow them down. And I don't know if this is a good matchup for SNS, but stranger things have happened. Like I said, the Rams show flashes. They ran for 175 yards last week against Ponder. They spread the ball around. Joey Baggs, Colby McSpadden, and Devin Jackson all got at least 11 carries. So I think they're kind of maybe trying to figure some stuff out there. The passing game is where they've kind of struggled moving the ball. Teams have been able to get them off the field in that area. So we'll see what happens with City View and SNS. And if City View can kind of keep near the top of the standings, if it's going to be a dark horse district champ, find a way to keep with Gunner and Holiday, and then maybe pick them off once those games come down the stretch here in a little bit. We're going to move now to 9-3A Division II, and we have Leonard at Bells. Leonard is sitting at 2-2, and Bells is 1-3. Bells lost again last week, and I say again because it was a 7-6 game against Collinsville. All 3 of Bells' losses, it sounds like a broken record because I've had to say it every week, all of their losses have been by 1 possession or less. So Bells could easily be 4-0. They could easily be 0-4. They're sitting at 1-3. They could be 2-2. Anything could be possible with Bells because they've had so many close games. Last week was another one, and you have to wonder, when they get things going all together, they could be in a good place. They were a playoff team last year, so they're trying to hold off Leonard. Because Bells was the 4th place team last year. Leonard was a game behind them, so this is one of those early swing games. Bells won this game 36-16 last year, and they're going to have to contend with Leonard quarterback DJ Brown, the sophomore, Started last year as a freshman, had a really good year, jumping up to the high school level. He's having another really good year this year. He kind of makes things go with them. Leonard is coming off a win last week, 39-24 against Detroit. So they're feeling good. And like I said, this is one of those games where they need to step up and beat somebody that they didn't beat last year. And Bells is the team that finished right in front of them. So this could be one of those swing games. We mentioned the 7-6 game last week against Collinsville. Bells did finish with almost 350 yards of offense. They ran 246 yards. Grady Waldrop, the freshman, getting some major playing time for the second straight week. He had 24 carries for 110 yards. Bo Baker had 12 carries for 73 yards. Tyler Hawthorne had 12 carries for 51 yards, and Blake Rowland was the one who had the touchdown run. It just was a missed extra point when Bells was trying to tie the game in the third quarter. Proved to be the difference. They weren't able to get another scoring opportunity, and they held Collinsville. They held Collinsville to 160 yards. It just turned out that they weren't able to get the extra point when they needed to at least go to overtime after winning in overtime the week before against Howe. The other District 9-3A Division 2 game, Whitewright travels to Chisholm. Whitewright is on a roll. They're at 3-1. They won last week 21-18 against Lindsay, while Chisholm is sitting at 1-3. They won 55-8 against Clarksville to get some positive momentum going into district play. And this was also a game last year that Chisholm won 55-28. But Whitewright's not the same team as they were last year. They've already won more games than last year when they won 2 games and finished in a tie with Leonard for 5th place. And Chisholm's kind of up and down. So like they won last week against 55-8 against Clarksville. They also scored 41 points in a victory. The other 2 games they've been shut out. So very Jekyll and Hyde offense and defensive performances for Chisholm, and Whitewright's on a roll. I think this is a really interesting matchup early on because if Whitewright can somehow come away, Dylan Cordell was able to lead them with another 100-yard rushing game, and he scored on the ground. He also caught a touchdown pass. Trevor McCartney had a touchdown catch from Marshall Mangrum. It's a situation where, confidence, I think, can go a long way. And like I said, Whitewright's playing as well as they have in a couple of years. If they win this game, they'll have matched their 17 and 18 season totals combined. So, things are going in the right direction there. And this is one of those games that if you win this, you can legitimately start talking about finding that path to the playoffs. Another reason for that, too, is when you look at the teams that are coming in, Whitewright, one, has the best record at 3-1. Blue Ridge is sitting at 2-1. But you also have Leonard is at 2-2, and then defending champion Cooper is 1-3, and Prairie Land and Bells are also, and Chisholm are all 1-3. So things are looking good in that respect. We'll just have to see how things play out. But again, this is one of those early interesting matchups between the 2 local teams in 9-3A Division 2. So we'll see what happens there. Now we're going to get into the last 3 games are all non-district games. All of our 2A teams are still playing non-district games because they're in smaller districts. So we still have another week or 2 for them to get into district play. Collinsville is at Seymour. This is a game that features a 3-1 Collinsville squad against a 1-3 Seymour squad. Collinsville, as we mentioned, they won 7-6 against Bells, and Seymour lost 18-6 against Windthorst. This game last year was close. Seymour won 24-14. So if it is another defensive battle, it would not surprise me, especially with the way Collinsville's playing. They are on a 3-game win streak. They lost their opener, and they've figured it out, and they've put some things together. Last week, Trey Shelby was their main guy in getting that win over Bells. He had 16 carries for 124 yards, and he scored the touchdown in the second quarter that ended up being the difference with the extra point being made. The last time that Collinsville has scored in single digits and won a game before last week was in 2002. So that was a rare feat. And so far this season, the Pirates have allowed more than 12 points in a game only once. So that's a situation where I think I think you can say if it is a defensive struggle, that would not be surprising. Seymour has taken a step back. They've already lost more games than they did last season, and when they went 10-2, so they're already 1-3. Obviously, it looks like graduation has forced them to kind of take a step back from the great season that they had last year. So it's a long trip though, so that might play a factor for Collinsville. So we'll see what happens there. Second of the 3 non-district games, Tom Bean is going to host Chico. Chico is sitting at 2-2. Tom Bean is still searching for its first win. It's 0-4. Chico lost last week 48-20 against Roscoe, while Tom Bean lost 34-0 against Wolf City. Tom Bean is trying to avoid its first 0-5 start since 2011. The offense is really struggling for Tom Bean. Like we mentioned, they got shut out last week. They have scored a touchdown or less in 5 of their past 6 games dating back to last year. But this was a game last year where there was a shootout. Chico was able to come away with the 46-42 win. I don't know if we'll see that much scoring, but you never know. But again, Tom Bean is in a situation where 2 years ago they got off to a bad start, but once they got into district play, they were able to share the district championship. So a bad start cannot necessarily be a harbinger of things to come, especially depending on who you play. Wolf City's a team that has a chance to win their district. So that may not end up looking like a really bad loss in the long run. We'll see if Tom Bean can bounce back and come away with a victory. And then the last game, we just talked about Wolf City. Tioga is going to be paying them a visit this week. Tioga is 2-2. Wolf City is 3-1. This was a game last year that was very lopsided. Wolf City won 54-0. But as we have mentioned before, Tioga is better. They won last week 36-28 against Celeste. And so that's a matchup where Reagan Mejia, the quarterback for Tioga, he threw for 278 yards and 5 touchdowns. He completed 21 of 33 passes. His favorite target was Caleb McKinney, who had 10 catches for 143 yards and 3 touchdowns. And Marshall Lease, both of his touchdown catches, totaled 60 yards. Those were his only catches of the game. So they were able to spread the ball around. They fell in an early 14-0 hole after the first quarter. They led 20-14 at halftime. They were down 21-20 going to the fourth quarter, and then they outscored them to pull out the win. And that gave Tioga more wins than all of last year. And like I said, in a district where when we get to their district play in a couple weeks, they've already clinched a playoff spot. So they're all about getting better and getting a better seed than the 4 seed last week. The interesting thing to mention about Wolf City, not only did they win last week 34-0 against Tom Bean, they're going to be out without their leading rusher, Dylan Wilson. It's the senior running back, was hurt last week and had to actually be care flighted due to that injury. He's fine, so that's good. But this is a precautionary type of deal. They don't think he's going to be ready for sure this week, and they want to make sure that he's ready for district play. So Amarian Jones, the quarterback, will probably have more of shouldering the load this week. Even last week, he had 12 carries for 116 yards and ran for a touchdown. Corey Vaughn is another guy who may end up getting more carries with Wilson's sideline. So that's going to be interesting to watch. We mentioned since moving up to 11-man football last year with Tioga, the 36 points they scored last week is the most they've scored since jumping up from the 6-man ranks. So the offense is getting better over there at Tioga. And if they can play like that, they've got a good chance to beat some people along the way. Celeste was a playoff team last year, so that will be interesting to see if they can do something like that again this week with Wolf City. So that is week 5. Should be interesting as we get into the games that really count for a lot of people. It's going to be interesting to see who can get into the playoffs after not making it last year, who can kind of keep their spot. And like we said, we've got a couple teams trying to defend a district championship as well. So we'll see what happens. Well, thank you for tuning in, and look forward to the action on Friday night.